What's up, guys? It has been with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to look at the Cook Political Report demographic swingometer for the 2020 presidential election. What this is based on is kind of looking at how the demographics have changed from the 2016 election, and then also we can kind of swing around where we think we've seen changes in the different polling groups, and then we can reflect that here, and then it will kind of go to the specific states here and do it based on the distribution there. If we look at this NBC News article, we can see that if the same percentage of people vote in each like kind of racial group, and they break it down by college graduates for the whites, and then but not for the other racial groups, and what this graphic is saying, and this news article is saying, is that demographic shifts since 2016 could be enough to defeat Trump. This is just in a purely 4-year period. The amount of likely voters has changed. It's because some people have died. So many people have been born and have passed the year or the 18 age mark when people are eligible, but and then also people just are kind of moving around the country. One recent trend is we've seen people kind of moving from the state of California to Texas. So Texas is definitely going to become more blue, and I mean same with kind of Georgia and Arizona. But see, let's look at this map right now. So this is kind of based exactly on the same 2016 performances. So Trump did very well with white non-college graduates. Hillary Clinton narrowly won in the white college graduate category, and then with blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, Hillary Clinton did fairly well. And what I want to adjust this here is with kind of which groups have kind of changed in their support to Trump. Generally speaking, it appears that Trump is losing ground with white voters, but gaining among black and Hispanic voters, which to some people this might come as a surprise, but I mean this is the data. It's actually very interesting. So Trump appears to be losing his support mainly among white voters without a college degree, but gaining among white voters with a college degree. So I think this is kind of going maybe a little counter to the mainstream narrative that Trump's base is kind of whites without a college degree. That's definitely kind of his biggest support group, but apparently he appears to be losing support there while maybe gaining supports in these other groups. So just looking at the same margins from 2016, which they definitely won't be the same, and I'll kind of explain that for a few reasons. But looking at these states, so there's 4 states that actually flip. Um, and Joe Biden gets that 307 number, which is actually pretty similar to the 306 number that Trump got in 2016. But we can see that Wisconsin flips just very barely. It's 0.7% in Biden's favor. Wisconsin the same, and then Pennsylvania by 1.3. So very, very similar outcome, just kind of on the other. So each of these states flip about a point. Pennsylvania about 2 points, but it just shows that the demographic changes even over a 4-year period are pretty large. And then in Florida, again, it's under one percentage point. It's pretty narrow, but Biden would win there with 0.9 percentage points. And I think the tipping point here would probably be either Michigan or Wisconsin. Florida would just kind of be the cherry on top. Biden necessarily wouldn't need to carry Florida, but some of these other swing states that some models have Biden winning, Trump would still win in Arizona, Georgia by 2.4, North Carolina by 2 points, Ohio by 7 points, and Iowa by 8 points, and that's if he kind of keeps the same margins. But let's account for maybe what some things have changed in the polls. Um, Honestly, I think that this map right here is pretty plausible. Obviously, I don't think these margins will be the exact same, but in terms of which states are blue and which states are red, I think this map could actually be more accurate, and the margins here could be more accurate than some of the other models that we've been seeing that account a lot for the polls. So using this graphic right here, we can see that Trump support has among whites without a college degree has dropped about 13 points. And so if we slide this by 13, that's going to actually be a 26% change. So we're only going to want to do that from half of it. So let's do about a 7% change. It was at 69. So we're going to move this to 63 just to call it even. And just because I think voter turnout is going to be higher among all groups, so I'm going to increase each group by about 5%. Okay, I think that's about right. Let's see how it is with whites with a college degree. It actually seems to be a 10-point shift towards Trump. And so on here, it's going to represent a 5-point shift. All right, and then up by 5. Okay, and we can see that nothing has really changed. So when we put this down, I think we saw North Carolina and Arizona flip, but once we do it back, we see that North Carolina and Arizona flip back into the column. So the margins are bigger for Biden up in the Rust Belt because that's heavily concentrated for the white without college degrees, and in Florida it gets bigger too. So now going back to the African American population, they've voters. They typically in the polls, Trump has been cutting into the Democrats' lead with black voters by about 11%. So let's call that even at about 5 or so, or 6. I really don't know what to do. Then increase the voter turnout by 5 points. So we can see nothing has really changed. The black voters are only accounting for about 12.5%. And then with Hispanics, let's see what we see here. We actually see a 14% shift, so that's going to be a 7% shift here. One more. Oh. And then we're going to see an increase. I think that's about right. Okay, so we actually did see Florida flip. I mean, Florida would be very, very close. And then with Asian, I don't think they give us any data. Asian Americans only contribute to about 5% of the vote, so maybe let's increase it by 5%. We can see that Florida actually flipped back very, very, very narrowly. So we can see here that nothing has actually really changed here, which is actually fairly interesting here. We can see that Iowa and Ohio get closer, which I think is probably more realistic. And the Rust Belt, Biden is winning by probably a larger margin, except in the state of Pennsylvania, where it's about the same. So this would give Joe Biden about 307 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 231. And the closest state is Florida, which we don't kind of get a breakdown here. But what one caveat I want to have here is that the like white voters, Hispanic voters, black voters, if you look at kind of by region, they're very different. So Hispanic voters in Arizona tend to be more Democratic than Hispanic voters in Florida, and I mean that definitely is a generalization, but that kind of holds up, especially between these two states. I think part of the reason for this is you have a lot more Cuban immigrants in Florida, and they tend to be more conservative than Hispanic immigrants at large. So right now, I think if we were to account for this, that actually Florida would flip for Trump, and Arizona maybe would flip for Biden. Maybe Trump can keep it in his column. But right now, I think where Trump has been losing support, the only group where he's been losing support is the white non-college graduates, is costing him the Rust Belt right now. So if Trump's going to want to win, he's going to have to maintain his support in this group, and if he does, we can see that he keeps the Rust Belt and even flips the state of Minnesota. So that, but if we look kind of back at where it has it in the polls, we can see that he would lose on election day. So going through this article right here, I thought it's pretty interesting. So they're saying that the demographic shifts enough, even if the support stays the same, which we saw before. Um, and so these are kind of just talking about different paths to victory. And I mean, this is Biden does like fairly well. I mean, winning Texas, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina. So this is kind of the best case scenario for Joe Biden. He wins by over 10 percentage points. I don't think that's necessarily realistic. If Trump bounces back with senior, this is a group that he's been underperforming. But this would be a very narrow path for Trump. He wins North Carolina, Florida, and Wisconsin, but loses Pennsylvania and Michigan. This gets us to the magic number of 270, which is definitely very possible. And these congressional districts here matter very much. He would retain his support in Nebraska's second and Maine's second congressional district. So, I mean, I think this is probably more likely than the first outcome, but still, I definitely think that Biden has an advantage right now. The third outcome to have is Biden squeaks by with college graduates. Right now, I think this is what my prediction is right now. Biden flips Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona, and wins by a smaller margin than our Trump did. Even though he would win by over 3.5 points in the popular vote, the electoral college would be very close. And the tipping point state here would be Pennsylvania. So if Trump were to flip Pennsylvania, then he would win, and Nebraska second. Number four is Biden coalesces the youngest and oldest, and I think this is a fairly realistic outcome. I think Florida and North Carolina are kind of pure toss-ups at this point, so they could go either way. But Trump would keep his support in Iowa, Ohio, and Texas, which I'm predicting right now. Um, Five, and this is kind of what I was talking about before. If Trump prevails with inroads among non-whites, he wins. He keeps the Rust Belt states and actually flips the state of Nevada, so kind of expands on his 2016 victory, holding all the states and then winning Nevada with his increased support among Hispanics. So that's definitely possible. And then this is kind of another kind of landslide victory for Biden when he kind of wins all the states that he needs to, all the swing states except for maybe Texas. And I think this is actually kind of what 538 and some of the forecasts are predicting, or very close. So there you have it right now. This is kind of what I've seen with my predictions here with the race. Let me know what you think of this tool, whether you think it's accurate, and I'll try to put a link to this in the description so y'all can play with it as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and be on the lookout for another video tomorrow.